African rugby, cricket, soccer supporters are in full force supporting South Africa's bid to host the 2023 Rugby World Cup. That announcement will be made in just over an hour, and the singing and dancing will continue until that announcement is made.
You can always rely on the South African fans to come out in their numbers and support anything that has to do with the green and gold, and today certainly is one of those days. We're going to be crossing to London in a bit as well, see what's happening there at the Royal Kensington Garden Hotel. But from a process point of view, it's fairly simple. Simple majority for South Africa, Ireland or France will win it, like we said, in about a half an hour's time.
No, it sounds simple, that majority vote gets host the World Cup, but I can tell you now, it wasn't as simple probably last night and a few weeks prior to that, because there been a lot of horse trading between the voting nations and the potential host nations. I know South Africa would not have, involved themselves much in that, because they believe they've got a very, very strong bid, as we saw with World Rugby, given the recommendation for South Africa to be their preferred host nation. Countries like Ireland and France,
report at the end of the day from the gentlemen and women who traveled through those three countries to assess. The band of scoring is not that big. The little bit of a majority that South Africa had was by a couple of points. So I can understand Ireland and France feeling hard done by, but at the end of the day, the process was fair, and South Africa ahead on points there.
Out of 24 independent assessors, 22 said South Africa. You can't get a more overwhelming, vote of confidence than that. And these are people who come from, those European countries, and they've seen the value in South Africa. But again, the margins are small, and again, so it takes a lot of convincing to get the right amount of votes to give South Africa the ultimate prize of hosting the World Cup.
Well, now, if you've begun feeling that nostalgia, that euphoria that you felt in 1995, let's take you even deeper in. Because as much as that tournament in 1995 was credited with shaping South African society, one thing we know for sure, it certainly changed the lives of the men who ran out in the green and gold.
We would have died for each other, to be quite honest. And I think to reach that goal together, and I think that's why we all went down and we said a prayer of thanks. I think that's more important than the cup.
I don't know if it's changed me, it's molded me, it's made me a grateful person. Very grateful for what we received, and grateful for the place that I live in and the people that, I call my own. And it has, it definitely gives you a foot up in life. I'm very, I got away with murder. But it does, it gives you a hell of an advantage, and it gives you something to be proud of, something to tell your kids about, and something to live your life by. And like I say, the underlying feeling must be one of gratefulness for the opportunity.
In a good way where you care more for other people. And I've got a thing where I say you have to go through a test to have a testimony. That was a test in a positive way.
This country has such a young history in the modern era, such a young democracy, under such a great leader and such a wonderful president in Mandela. For us to have been a little part of that big cog and a little part of what the bigger picture was, I think, and to have played in some little way in Madiba's life an important role in his uniting a nation, that's the special thing.
Nelson Mandela came in the forefront with us, even better for us to get that feel of unification for South Africa. So yes, I felt I've done enough at the World Cup, but after the World Cup, I felt like there was a lot more for me to do to make sure that we can build on what we achieved during '95.
It only sank in like a few days after when we started to realize what is happening. When you go to a petrol station and the guys just clap hands, and wherever you go, everybody just shake your hand, and then you start to realize, wow, if a game like rugby can achieve this, I want to see this more.
Wow, Joost van der Westhuizen, and may your soul rest in peace. But Wata, there's so much folklore around that tournament, around the men who took part in it. And yes, they certainly had heart. If we look at matches against France, against Canada, that final in the spect of Jonah Lomu. But where do they rate in terms of the most skillful Springbok side that we've ever seen?
I think they're probably not even in the top 5 of the most skillful side. I think skills will get you somewhere in a Rugby World Cup. A lot has to do with the heart. You know, a lot has to do with the planning and the fitness of sides. And this was probably the most fittest, that 1995 side was probably one of the most fittest sides in the history of the game. You know, they ran at the Pretoria College, Police College, you know, for days and days and weeks on end. You remember stories from Gaza Kova's Visa and Nana Stradom saying, you know, at some point they hated Kitch Christie. They really hated him. You know, however, you saw in that extra time of that final, you know, all the hard work they'd put in, all the blood, sweat and tears they'd gone through, you know, made them, you know, ultimate world champions. And again, you know, we want to speak about skill. You look at what All Blacks had in their side, look at what France had in the team, the likes of Philippe Selaï and so on. The skill was always with the opposition. What these guys were on was a brute force and brawn. And that's what South Africans are well known for. And they brought it on, but more than anything, they played with so much heart. And they knew, you know, as Francois Pienaar said at the end, you know, it was not for the 50,000 people at Ellis Park that day. It was for the 43 million South Africans that were watching them.
Well, now, I think we'll all have our favorite moments of the tournament. We all remember that moment of the drop kick going through the poles. But for me, the moment was really seeing Nelson Mandela, before being elected as the first black president of South Africa, coming onto that field with that number 6 jersey and doffing his cap to the boys who had just done him proud. It was part of his social construct for South Africa. And you'll remember, SABC Sport brought you that game way back in 1995. Our crew sat down with the great man afterwards to find out whether what he thought the tournament would do actually matched up with his plans.
It showed that South African rugby was still one of the best in the world. It united our people. You know, one of the top businessmen here was telling of what happened after the match. He was going home and he came across a robot, and next to him there was a car full of blacks. They say to him, "Why are you so sad? We have won. We are at the top of the world." Those were Africans who used to boycott rugby. But that day, it changed the picture altogether, united our people. Sports is very important in the sense that they speak a language which cannot be spoken by political leaders. Sports can reach centers which are far beyond us as political leaders.
I don't know about you, Tokoloshi, whether it exists or not, we can debate the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, but Madiba magic at that time was certainly real.
No, without a doubt. I think that Madiba magic went on to help Bafana Bafana, win the Nations Cup, which we hosted. So Madiba magic was real. I think a lot of people, guys like us, who have a bit of salt and pepper, would know that, you know, we would have felt it. We would have felt it. You know, you felt it every time a national team went on the field. This man had a way of motivating national sides, motivating our athletes, you know, to do well on the world stage. And what a fantastic, fantastic human being who had a vision, you know, that nobody had. You know, and as you said, you know, sport has got the ability to do what politicians cannot do. And I mean, to think of something like that and to be able to get not just black people on your side, to get everyone behind one common cause at a time where the country was going through a transition was, you know, again, a stroke of genius.
From genius to anticipation, the time certainly mounting. We're about 16 or so minutes away from crossing to London to find out whether South Africa will be hosts of the Rugby World Cup yet again in 2023. Before we get there, let's take a quick little break.
tlo kgutlisetsa ke tlo mbolaya.
Welcome back. We're live on SABC3 with a very special broadcast as we relive the moments of the 1995 Rugby World Cup, the first time South Africa hosted and won the tournament. Why? Because today, in a couple of minutes' time, we will find out live and direct from London whether South Africa will get to host once more and whether they've won the bid over the likes of France and Ireland. Now, on the 25th of September of this year, a 12-man panel went and represented South Africa as if they were our very own rugby side to World Rugby, went and made our case, presented the bid book. One man who was with them was Deputy Minister of Sports and Recreation, Gerrit Oosthuizen. He's not in London today, but he's standing by in the nation's capital to soak up the vibe of South Africans who've pitched up today to say, we want that tournament back here in South Africa.
Adjunct Minister, wat sal 'n rugby wêreldbeker in 2023 vir Suid-Afrika beteken?
2023 gaan Suid-Afrika daai kom gee wat ons nodig het. Om net weer as 'n nasie te sê ons behoort saam, ons trek saam in dieselfde rigting in, om net weer te verstaan ons is almal Suid-Afrikaners. Daar's genoeg plek in die son vir al sy mense in die somer, in die winter en genoeg plek in die koeltebome in die somer. Suid-Afrika kan almal akkommodeer. Kyk vandag wat hier aangaan. Ons kort weer daardie oomblik in Suid-Afrika. Soos Nelson Mandela, ons vader van ons nasie, en François Pienaar gedoen het, die kan dit vergeet. So dit ons kort. Wat vir ons gaan beteken ook ekonomies, ons gaan 'n direkte impak hê van so 27,8 biljoen. Ons verwag so 1,4 biljoen in belasting. Ons verwag 'n groot deel van daardie geld sal gaan vir mense wat ekonomies gemarginaliseerd is. So all in all, dis vir ons net absolute wen om hom aan te bied.
Government has put a lot of money into this bid, 1.2 billion, 1.6 billion, I think. What's your expectations in return?
Well, government has put the guarantee. It's an irrevocable guarantee that we provided, and we said from the outset, it's economic, but we do that consciously, firstly. Secondly, in the event that we win the bid, we will make money out of it. The country will make money out of it. And that's what government is there for, to create conditions for our people to thrive, for the economy to grow, for the tourism impact that we had, because when we hosted 2010 FIFA World Cup, we were very conscious and we communicated that. We said we are investing in infrastructure for a legacy so that in future we can leverage on that investment, precisely what we are doing now.
A lot has been said about the department and the growing rugby grassroots level. Do you think the Rugby World Cup in 2023 will grow rugby grassroots level?
Absolutely. Part of the whole process was that they will take rugby to include 1 million young people that's been excluded from rugby so far. That's absolutely a tick in the right direction. That's something that excites us because the talent that will be unearthing with that process speaks for itself in the bigger scheme of things. Transformation, just bringing our nation together and creating opportunities for young people that when I move around in the country, I see written here, help me, gee my 'n geleentheid. And that's what exactly we're going to achieve here. Ons gaan vir mense geleentheid gee om deel te neem aan rugby in al die uithoeke van die land.
And do you think the Rugby World Cup in 2023 will leave a legacy?
It will most certainly leave a legacy, not only economically, but in terms of the game being played rugby. It's going to leave a massive legacy. But more importantly, I'm convinced it will leave a legacy that Nelson Mandela and François Pienaar's World Cup left. Uniting the Rainbow Nation, uniting us going forward, saying together we do more.
Well, South Africa, I just got to say a big thank you to you. You know, you were asked short notice to get out to Sammy Marks Square in Pretoria, in the nation's capital, to go and support what is happening in London today. And hats off to you. You certainly have gone out in your numbers. Colourful, as South Africans always are, and hoping that it's pulled through today and South Africa is announced as the 2023 hosts. Interesting words from the Deputy Minister there, because it does allude to two things. A, the legacy of the 2010 World Cup has put us in a great position to host just about anything in the world of sport. And secondly, there are quite a few things that are left undone in terms of the social project that rugby was meant to be, in the view, the thoughts of Nelson Mandela.
Oh, no, I think, Udo, the most important one having been the fact that the 2010 FIFA World Cup left a legacy that, you know, will filter on and trickle into other sporting codes. The fact that we don't have to build new stadiums is a massive, you know, plus for South Africa, because the strain on the economy and the fiscus would have been enormous. But then there's an ugly word that people don't want to talk about: transformation. You know, I like Deputy Minister Ostays when he says, "Help me." Yeah, you know, in fair chance. So this is the cry of many young black rugby players in this country. All they want is an opportunity and a chance.
All right. I want to have a look now, because if you think that hosting the Rugby World Cup simply guarantees you a win, talk to us about that list, because if we look at all the host nations there in the past, it's only happened on 2 occasions.
Only 2 occasions, South Africa in 1995 and 2011 in New Zealand. Again, a lot of teams would assume that hosting a Rugby World Cup, you know, already gives them, you know, 1 foot in the final. It doesn't do that at all. You got to play just as hard as all the other sides. You know, we saw the trials and tribulations the Springboks went through in 1995. We saw how, I think, New Zealand were able to maneuver their way, largely due to a competitor of theirs, Bryce Lawrence, who made sure the Springboks don't get through. Again, it's a difficult thing. And again, Japan will look at 2019 and set themselves, they've got a chance of making the knockouts for the first time in their history. They'll go back and look at 2015, when they beat South Africa, and said themselves, they had the most wins and most points out of any side in the pool stages not to go through into quarterfinals. So they'll look at it and say to themselves, maybe.
Now, where we are today is the culmination, the end point of a 16-month process where South Africa decided we're coming from transformation problems. We have the right to bid for a major international tournament, and we're doing it with the 2023 Rugby World Cup.
South Africa. Simi best Juni Nantaba, Panelis, Lamakawa, Namakawa Gassi. Sitjabes Kotia Goma Sitjala. Lumkimpisi Lungele, Lumkimpisi Yaulaga Selela, Siti Malmani, Yama Africa. Lumkimpisi Lungele.
Looks for the drop. Has he got it? Yes, it's over. That is it. The final whistle then. South Africa win this Rugby World Cup final. And what a dramatic finish for the host country.
Indavole haye
Now, there is no doubt about it that rugby courses through the veins of millions of South Africans, black, white, purple or brown. We've developed fortresses of rugby, spiritual homes of rugby. But this World Cup is a little bit different in terms of where the game will be taken if South Africa hosts in 2023. Very interesting, Vata Ngobeni, if we look at even the pool venues. Free State Stadium, obviously one of the traditional venues, but we look at Bombela Stadium being used for pool venues and some of the other venues in the group matches. Very interesting where this tournament is going.
No, that thing's going finally back to the people. You know, it's going to those venues that you said are not traditional rugby venues. It's nice to see Bombela in the mix there. We've seen the Pumas, they use a lot of Bombela. Moses Mabhida, what a beautiful, beautiful stadium.
Yeah.
And you look at that one, you look at Cape Town Stadium as well. And the good thing is that we've got some of the iconic stadiums as well, like Loftus and Ellis Park still in the mix. But then the Calabash. What a phenomenal and beautiful stadium. 90,000 seater.
Yeah,
World Rugby has never seen something like this. And they know, you bring this World Cup to South Africa, opening game, the two semi-finals, and the final is going to be something the world has never seen before.
Look, I look at the Calabash and I just got to say that has become our national stadium, and I like what they've done with this tournament. Quick, cheeky little question. If you are the leaseholders for Kings Park and for Newland Stadium at the moment, are you rethinking ahead of 2023 where you play the rugby?
I think Western Province Rugby Union should have rethought a long time ago. They're sitting with a beautiful stadium, waiting for them. It's begging for them just to move across town. Small little move across town. They still own the land that Newlands is sitting on now. And if I was Gary Teichmann, I'd have already requested for demolition work to begin at Kings Park, because next door to them is just a world-class venue. You've got to. You just have to take rugby to those venues.
That is a discussion for another day entirely. We need to take a break because we are minutes away from going live to the Royal Kensington Garden Hotel in London to find out if South Africa in 2023 will be the place to be for the Rugby World Cup.
Today on Rights and Recourse, we will unpack the new traditional court bill.
The idea of the bill is not to over-regulate, to basically set the principles.
The most important aspect of this bill is that it understands that customary law by its nature.
The opt-out provision is basically one that you've got to respect the court in the sense of, if you've been summoned, you've got to tell the clerk of the court at least that you're not willing to attend.
The challenge that I would like to throw to the Department of Justice, it has to come up with mechanisms of ensuring that people who exercise their right to opt out or to opt in are not in any way victimized.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Mates on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African Time.
Welcome back to a special broadcast here on SABC 3 as we build up to the announcement of the Rugby World Cup hosts in 2023. The nation gathered at Sammy Marks Square in Pretoria, in the nation's capital. It's a beautiful thing to see. There's a live viewing happening right there. But you stay with us and we'll be sure to let you know who's going to host that tournament. Let's just wrap up a couple of things here, because a lot has been said by France and Ireland about South Africa and where they should be in the pecking order. Bottom line, as we said, independent assessors decided South Africa leading the pack at the moment. But in your gut, in your heart, you've spoken about the horse trading. Will that horse trading lead to a different decision from that technical report?
It's difficult to say, because we don't know what Ireland has promised the other nations. We don't know. I know that Argentina is one of the nations that has been in chats with Ireland. And Ireland would have said to them, you bid for the next World Cup, we'll come, we'll support you. And the rest of France, on the other hand, didn't waste time. They went all the way to New Zealand and got John Olom, the late John Olomo's kids, you know, to come do their bidding for them. But my heart of hearts still tells me that South Africa stands on very, very solid footing in that it makes sense financially for World Rugby to come here. It makes sense emotionally, but it makes sense for spreading the game of rugby into the continent, which is what World Rugby is now dying to do. They're going to the East in 2019, but they need to come here. South America, Argentina's got to know, South Americans have got to know that South Africa has been behind them joining Super Rugby, behind them joining the Rugby Championship. So they know South Africa has been an ally of theirs. And I find it extremely difficult if Argentina would really go against the grain and go against what has been a friend of theirs, you know, through difficult times, and go with Ireland.
Well, we've got live pictures coming in, of course, from that Royal Kensington Garden Hotel in London, where that announcement is set to be made within minutes. And we saw just where the tournament has been across the years. Let's go live there now and find out if we will host in 2020.
Host union decision. Rugby World Cup 2023 will be the 10th edition of our Games Showcase event, and it will also mark the 200th anniversary of the birth of the sport, when William Webb Ellis picks up that ball and ran. There have been 8 World Cups so far. Let's have a quick look back at some of the previous hosts. It all started in 1987, of course, the inaugural Rugby World Cup, hosted by New Zealand and Australia. New Zealand won their first title. 1991 in England, Ireland, Wales, Scotland and France, where the Wallabies won their first World Cup. 1995 in South Africa, who could forget that? Perhaps the most iconic Rugby World Cup of all, won by the Springboks. 1999, hosted by Wales, where Australia won their second Rugby World Cup trophy. 2003 in Australia, where we had our first and only Northern Hemisphere winner in England. And 2007 in France, where South Africa won their second title. 2011 in New Zealand, where they won their second trophy on home soil. And 2015 here in England, where the All Blacks made it 3. We will, of course, in less than 2 years now, be in Japan in 2019. And today we will find out who will be passed the hosting ball for the 2023 Rugby World Cup. And in case you needed reminding, a quick reminder of who the 3 host candidates are. They are France, Ireland and South Africa. Okay, I would now like to welcome to the stage the chairman of World Rugby and Rugby World Cup to make the announcement, Bill Beaumont.
Friends in rugby, on behalf of World Rugby, my pleasure to welcome you today to London for the announcement Rugby World Cup 2023 host nation. And in a few moments, we will discover who will host the 10th edition of our fantastic event. But before we do, I'd like to thank our 3 host candidates, France, Ireland and South Africa. We set out on this host selection process with the objective of selecting a host that would deliver an outstanding Rugby World Cup in every way. Within their bids, all 3 candidates demonstrated that they could deliver a truly exceptional tournament. For teams, for fans, for the global game, we believe that this is the most comprehensive and transparent host selection process ever undertaken by World Rugby. Just a short time ago, the World Rugby Council cast their vote. The process was presided over by independent auditors from PricewaterhouseCoopers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to announce that the host for the Rugby World Cup 2023 is France.
We could just welcome to the stage, please, the President of the French Rugby Federation, Bernard Laporte. Please, Bernard. Bernard, félicitations. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you describe your feelings to us right now after hearing that announcement?
Oui, d'abord je voudrais remercier la délégation irlandaise et la délégation sud-africaine. Je sais le travail qu'ils ont fourni puisque nous avons fait le même. Beaucoup de temps consacré, beaucoup de déplacements, beaucoup d'énergie. Donc je veux simplement les saluer. Ensuite, je voudrais remercier toute l'équipe qui a travaillé autour de Claude Hachi. Claude, encore une fois, merci beaucoup. Je l'ai dit et je l'ai redit, sans toi, nous ne serions pas là. Merci aux ambassadeurs, merci à toute l'équipe qui a travaillé dur. C'était un gros challenge pour nous, que nous avons pris avec beaucoup de retard. Mais je suis fier de vous, encore une fois, et fier que la France ait été choisie. Et enfin, je voudrais remercier, bien sûr, World Rugby aussi, et qui a fait beaucoup, même s'il y a eu des incompréhensions, etc. Je crois que, encore une fois, merci à Bill, merci à World Rugby.
And Bernard, what type of World Cup can we expect to see in France?
On avait un dossier comme l'Irlande et comme l'Afrique du Sud qui était très solide. Et je crois que Bill l'a dit, les trois candidats étaient trois candidats très sérieux. Donc nous ferons notre possible, notre meilleur. Et je peux vous garantir que ce sera une Coupe du Monde formidable et j'en suis convaincu.
Bill, what's your reaction?
Well, I think we've been fortunate to have three great Brits, and certainly there's going to be two of the countries extremely disappointed, but obviously delighted for France that they've got, they've run a World Cup before, they've run events before, and I think it'll be really exciting, be an exciting tournament.
How would you sum up the process as a whole since it kicked off with the bids back in June?
I think it's been a long process. Hopefully that everybody felt involved in the process. It's been a transparent process, and we feel for the first time that actually within World Rugby that we put the results of our evaluation process out to the public, so everybody's been able to see what they felt and been able to comment on those as well.
Okay, well, thank you, Bernard. Thank you, Bill. Congratulations once again to France, the successful candidates for Rugby World Cup 2023. Just having an envelope passed here.
These are the scores of the various rounds. So
okay.
The first round was France 18, Ireland 8, South Africa 13. And the round 2 was France 24, South Africa 15.
Okay, well, that brings to a conclusion the announcement for Rugby World Cup 2023. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And congratulations once again to France.
Devastating, I think, for the entire nation as we're watching this live, because there was this general expectation that given the technical report, South Africa would sail through and get it to Devata. But if I look at the round of voting, 18 versus 13, still very tight between South Africa and France, Ireland falling out in that first round. And then in that second round, you've got to think, what swayed the delegates to go 24-15 in that second round of voting?
It would be very interesting to find out what France really did. That would make, such a gap in terms of voting. Good thing Ireland fell off. However, it was not to our benefit because one would have thought that those who were not voting for Ireland would turn around and vote for South Africa. Massively disappointing. I think that emptiness. That's now, I think, engulfed the studio as well.
It's a bit of a surreal feeling. It really is.
There was so much optimism going into this process, and to think that France had hosted a World Cup just 10 years ago, of which South Africa won. So hopefully, as omens go, we'll go back to France.
But let's let's just try and piece this together now in terms of what those delegates would have been thinking, because as we said, in terms of scoring, it was in that order as well: South Africa, France, and Ireland, and South Africa very much the clear leader there. The overwhelming selling point for South Africa is just the cost of hosting the tournament here would be much cheaper than anywhere in Europe, for that matter. We know that France was the country that came into this entire process with the biggest check, if we recall. Yeah. Does this come down to money at the end of the day, and what France are able to put on the table?
I think if it does come down to money, South Africa probably would have generated more money than any other of the three bidding nations. Maybe the strength of the euro would have counted very much in favour of France, and the fact that they're hosting the Olympics. I think a lot of Europeans have looked at it and said to themselves, you know, if I can travel between London and Paris in an hour or 2 hours by train, or take a 30-minute flight, why would I want to fly 10, 11 hours down to South Africa, be away from home for 2 months? You know, whereas, you know, for broadcasters, it's easier. A lot of them are based in Europe. For the sponsors, it's also easier as well, because Europe is home to a lot of the big corporates that sponsor World Rugby. But then again, you know, it's so difficult to comprehend how, you know, the preferred nation, you know, ends up with such a big gap from the one
which is why I was asking the question earlier whether there's been a trend, and certainly if you look back in the history of Rugby World Cup bids and announcements, you've hardly ever seen the technical report come out with a clear favourite, and then the council members who are voting go in a different direction.
It was something new. It was completely something new. And as Beaumont said, they were trying to be as transparent as possible. But
you know, just the irony there is when he opened with those words, the most transparent process ever, I thought, nah, South Africa got it in the bag.
And this is where I question the transparency, because if the voting nations had listened to what the independent consultants had said, I think this was clear as daylight who should have won this World Cup. However, again, the horse trading, without a doubt, has come to the aid of France. And the fact that I think having 2 European nations and 1 African nation, a lot of the guys who have put the eggs in the Irish basket, it was easy for them to go over to France. So, unfortunately, you know, politics come to play, and not what you and I view as common sense.
I do want to ask you, because I'm sure you were chomping at the bit as a journalist now to get on the phones, to be chatting with people in the backgrounds, because that horse trading that you spoke about, it clearly had a major impact here today. And where the alliances across world rugby would have lied would be lying for us to have the result here today. Care to venture a little bit of a speculative guess in terms of what swayed it eventually for France?
Again, Udo, it's going to be probably what France has said to other nations within the IOC who want to host Olympic Games, and what they've said to other nations who see themselves as possible Rugby World Cup hosts. And France is saying to them, because France has gone on this massive campaign, not just for Rugby World Cup, but also for Olympics as well. So they've gone around the world, and they've been trying to garner support from everybody, from just the world of sport in general. So they would have said to themselves, you vote for us, come Olympics, come Rugby World Cup, you guarantee the support of France, you know, in whatever you want to do. They've got it now. I'm waiting to see how they return the favour back to those who voted for them.
Well, I can't wait to hear from our men and women who are in London at the moment, because you saw the face of the Minister of Sports and Recreation as soon as, hey, and it's deja vu. The name of the nation came out of the envelope. You saw the look on the face of Minister Thulas Nxesi. South Africa, how do you feel right now? We're going to take a quick little break just to gather our thoughts and take a bit of a breather, because it certainly has taken the breath right out of us. South Africa won't be hosting the Rugby World Cup in 2023. That honour, according to the World Rugby Council today, goes to France.
stay completely still, pop straight through the balloon.
Ha o ka tisetsa hanyane fela ho se ho kae.